Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Marlon Primes, the President-elect of the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. I'm here today on behalf of Bar Association President Darrell Clay. We are proud to partner with the City Club to present the annual Law Day Forum. This year, we are delighted to welcome United States Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont. Every year, Law Day is marked around the nation on May 1st, and every year we pick a Friday for a City Club Forum on a topic related to the rule of law as we find it practiced here in the United States. This year, we are focused on the separation of powers, a topic selected by our colleagues at the American Bar Association. As we all know, the U.S. Constitution puts forth a system of government with three separate but equal branches: the presidency, Congress, a Supreme Court. For the founders, this structure preserved political liberty, with each separate branch sharing power and serving as a check on the power of the others. Congress makes the laws, the president enforces them, and the judiciary adjudicates them. However, the reality is not so simple. This delicate framework for freedom relies on our political leaders and our citizens alike ensuring that the separation is maintained, separation but equal powers respected, and the republic supported and allowed to endure. Obviously, there is a tension between our branches of government when the United States Supreme Court reviews the constitutionality of congressional legislation or reviews the constitutionality of the president's executive orders. There's also tension in the grappling with the concept of separation of powers when Congress decides whether to approve presidential nominees or when and how the president exercises power as a nation's commander-in-chief. Today we have a guest speaker that has had a front row seat during many of the recent tensions between our three branches of government. Patrick Leahy was elected to the United States Senate in 1974 at the age of 34, the youngest ever elected from the Green Mountain State. As we're here to discuss the separation of powers, it's worth noting that in 2008, Senator Leahy's Judiciary Committee investigated the mass firings of U.S. attorneys during the middle of their terms, which tested the limits of the appointment power of the executive branch. Currently, Senator Leahy is the Vice Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee and as the senior-most member of the Senate Judiciary Committee of the Senate Agricultural Committee. He is a ranking member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on State Department, Foreign Operations, and related programs. He ranks first in seniority in the United States Senate. Prior to his election to Congress, Senator Leahy served for 8 years as a state's attorney for Chittenden County, where he gained a national reputation for his law enforcement activities and was selected as one of 3 outstanding prosecutors in the United States in 1974. He holds a bachelor's degree from St. Michael's College and a Juris Doctorate from my alma mater, Georgetown University Law Center. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland and the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, please join me in a warm welcome for the 2018 Law Day Speaker, Senator Patrick Leahy.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I want you to know we have at least 2 graduates of St. Michael's College here. 3? 2. You both are? Okay, there's 3 of us. Thank you. Long and her husband Mark over here. Daniel, you mentioned you survived 100 days of spring. January. Well, Monday I was at our old farmhouse in Middlesex, Vermont, taking about 3 inches of snow off the front steps. On Wednesday, it was 84 degrees. And last night, before I went to bed, I was checking what your weather is apt to be out here with tornadoes, rain, and everything else. So thank you for clearing it before I came here. And Hannah, it was worth it to come here just to hear you. I appreciate it. I think we have to realize we're all people, and all of us, and treat it accordingly. something that's easy to say, it's not always done. And when I see what the City Club of Cleveland does, bringing people together to talk about the most important issues of the day, all of us, that's a fundamental part of our democracy. Your rich history, citizen empowerment organizations, Chautauqua movement. Did I pronounce that correctly? Fine. Okay. That's American. And whether a democracy, and I believe we have a great democracy, whether it survives depends upon whether citizens are both informed and engaged. So I thank you, because I am one person who would like to see our democracy survive, and I worry about that every single day. And in that regard, we have to remember the separations of powers. If there's ever a time to go back to this high school civics class, should be grade school civics class, is probably as timely today as ever. Our founders envisioned a nation governed by laws, not by people. Their genius was in realizing the rule of law could endure only by preventing the concentration of power in just a few hands. They enshrined the separation of powers into our Constitution. Article 1, defining the legislative branch. Article 2, the executive branch. Article 3, the judicial branch. 3 separate co-equal branches of government, and they have a constitutional obligation to check and balance on each other. And that could be a messy one. The executive's decision may be blocked by the judiciary. Legislative action may be vetoed by the executive. The judiciary decisions may become irrelevant by the passage of a new statute. But that preserves the rule of law as we know it today. Now, as the Dean of the Senate, I've seen the separation of powers at work for more than 4 decades. Sometimes it makes legislating very difficult. Sometimes it merely makes us more careful. But it's often allowed Congress to serve as a check on the excesses of an administration. But at all times, it preserves the fundamental balance of power that defines our constitutional republic. This may sound political. I'm speaking, though, as one who's been proud to serve in the United States Senate, be there under both Republican and Democratic leadership, during Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. In the past year, I've been concerned this balance is at risk. I've been concerned that the time-tested lines drawn between the branches of government have started to blur. Take, for example, our judicial confirmation process. The Constitution is very clear. The executive branch can appoint judges only with the advice and consent of the Senate. Senate's done darn little advising and a lot more rubber stamping lately. It's concerning that the Senate's advice and consent prerogative is being eroded by the Senate itself, something I have never seen since I came there. It ceded its constitutional authority to the executive branch. The Senate Judiciary Committee, which slow-walked judicial nominees during the last 2 years of the Obama administration, and if that sounds partisan, the Senate Judiciary Committee under Democratic leadership confirmed 3 to 4 times more judges in the last 2 years of the last Bush administration than they did during the last 2 years of the Obama administration. The only time in our history when a president has nominated somebody to be to the Supreme Court, and the Senate Judiciary Committee refused to even hold a hearing. That was Merrick Garland. It's never happened before. The committee is disregarding precedent and regularly holds hearings with multiple circuit court nominees, our nation's second highest court, and they'll put them on well before neutral experts like the American Bar Association can even have an opportunity to evaluate their qualifications. There has probably not been a time in history that the Judiciary Committee has been as politicized as it is today. And you have two wonderful people here who work so hard with the Judiciary Committee to make it work. They're not asking for home state senators' consent or even advice on who might be nominated from their state. That was a process that was set up to ensure that the White House, whoever it was, would work with home state senators to make sure that nominees were mutually acceptable. We have time next week. We'll consider a nominee to the Wisconsin seat of the 7th Circuit. Home state senator, Senator Tammy Baldwin, has objected. In fact, this person hasn't even received the recommendation of that state's decades-old bipartisan, and it is bipartisan, judicial selection. This never happened during the Obama administration, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, and now it's becoming the norm. Well, what we've seen is that many of these nominees has nothing to do with their qualifications. It has everything to do with politics. And I'm one who has voted for more Republican-nominated judges than most Republicans have. I will continue to do that if they fit the mainstream and qualified. But if they're not qualified, if they don't fit the mainstream, I will vote no. Because I believe strongly, and I've felt this way, and I've said this to presidents, beginning with President Ford, straight up to today. If the Senate's a rubber stamp for the executive branch judicial nominees, then it gives up its role as a gatekeeper for these lifetime appointments. And what we do is allow the executive to stop the balance of powers, the checks and balances. They concentrate it in their own hands. And I've seen such a politicization of this. Now, it's not new that somebody might criticize the merits of a judicial opinion, but I've never before witnessed such personal attacks on federal judges and blatant attempts to undermine their constitutional authority. When then candidate Donald Trump claimed that a federal judge's Mexican heritage prevented him from fairly adjudicating a case involving Trump University, a case where he said it was totally without merits until he quietly paid a $25 million judgment for fraud. That hurts the whole judicial system. When another federal judge blocked his travel ban, he belittled him as a so-called judge and said if anything ever happens in a terrorist attack, whether it has anything to do with the travel ban or not, that judge should be held personally responsible. I'm a lawyer. I'm proud to be a lawyer. That's what I put first on my background. I was proud to be a prosecutor. But I also am proud to say judges have to make those decisions. Attorney General Sessions added that he was amazed at a judge sitting on an island in the Pacific. Well, I told him, Jeff, that's one of the 50 United States. It's called Hawaii. And he was amazed that a federal judge sitting on an island in the Pacific could contradict the president. When a federal judge stopped President Trump from ending the DACA program, he claimed our courts are simply broken and said we should change their authority. Now, these undermine the legitimacy of the federal judiciary, undermines the separation of powers, and it makes, I mean, a lot of you are in court all the time. Keep in mind, most people get in court once, perhaps in their lifetime, if they go at all. And they expect the judge to be impartial, and they don't expect somebody to politicize what the judge has done. And then the other area is the malicious and relentless attacks on our independent law enforcement institutions. I was a prosecutor for 8 years. I was proud of being a prosecutor. But I would not allow politics to go into the prosecutor's office, as some well-known Democrats and Republicans found out when they went to jail. But if we allow politics to bleed into our justice system, we let it become a weapon in the hands of those looking to accumulate, preserve power. Look at the president's, I was going to say daily Twitter feed. Look at the president's every 5-minute Twitter feed. He's taunted career Justice Department officials with both personal and demonstrably false attacks. He claims that one of the most critical national security investigations of our time into how the Russian government interfered with our democracy is a witch hunt. And what does that say to other countries that are also saying Russia trying to interfere with their elections? He's twice reportedly tried to fire Special Counsel Mueller. 2 days ago, he suggested the investigation was itself an intrusion into his executive power. He threatened to get involved. Well, he's already been involved almost on a daily basis with the Justice Department, more than any president in my lifetime since Richard Nixon. Well, what I told the people I prosecuted, no matter their political party, I said, none of us are above the law. But I also add, because it bears repeating, no president is above the law. Every branch has to fulfill its constitutional obligations. In this regard, Congress has some work to do. Some members of Congress, especially in the House, enabled the president's worst impulses by treating a serious, lawful investigation as a political football and saying they had to design the results to meet the approval of the White House. Some of the false attacks on Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who oversees the Russian investigation, were reportedly orchestrated by the White House. Just this week, the president's allies in the House, to intimidate Mr. Rosenstein, drafted articles of impeachment. That led Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who incidentally is a lifelong Republican, who has served the last 3 administrations, responded, the Department of Justice is not going to be extorted. We can't treat what's happening as normal. I'm vice chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. I've had 4 decades of experience with the appropriation process, 7 administrations in both parties, and I'm seeing separation of powers issues rising there. The president is concerned that we wouldn't appropriate $25 or $40 billion for a wall that, last I heard, Mexico was going to pay for, but slow mail, the check hasn't arrived. But the president said he's going to teach the Congress. He wants to institute a line item veto. Many Republicans and Democrats point out to him that was found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Some of us still believe in the Constitution. And when we observe World Press Freedom Day, we have to note the press is under enormous attack. We expect this in some other countries, but not in America. Do I get annoyed if I read something in the press about me that I don't like? Of course I do. But I speak of their right. I am happy with the First Amendment awards I've received. We have to have a free press. My parents brought me up to believe that their most important part of the Constitution is the First Amendment. It allows you to practice any religion you want or none if you want. And it allows for freedom of the press. Because if you have those freedoms, you have diversity. If you have diversity, you have a democracy. Well, those who are trying to shut out and smear, discredit, threaten, or even assault journalists, overseas or right here at home, erode the very foundations of the America we know, the America we hope to leave for our children. Now, it's not all bad news. Jeremy's looking at me. No, it's not all bad news. No. Last week, the Senate Judiciary Committee, with a very strong bipartisan vote, advanced legislation to protect Special Counsel Mueller and any future special counsel from being fired by the president without good cause. I think it sends a powerful message to the White House. Firing Special Counsel Mueller will not stand. Even Republicans who voted against the bill made it very clear that the special counsel has to fulfill his investigation. So that's something of hope. The Republicans and Democrats will come together and say the basic rule of law has to prevail. But I'm optimistic. That's because the ultimate check and balance within our system are individuals in this room, citizens of our country. I've never seen such an engaged and informed citizenry. And a lot of you are making your voices heard in Washington. It makes some people nervous. It makes me kind of happy. The day after the inauguration, there's a women's march. You may have read about that. The crowds were very, very large. There were photographs of crowds the day before. Anyway. My wife and I walked with our daughter and our granddaughter. And I saw people of all ages and all politics coming together. And it was a good feeling. And when the Florida high school students came, now both instances, we sent out a notice that we had rooms and places available to meet before the march for any Vermonters who showed up. The first march, 600 Vermonters came down. Another 19,000 were on the State House lawn in Montpelier, Vermont. Montpelier is a city of 8,500 people. 19,000 were there for it. We saw that in Florida. Anybody who listened to those speeches had to be moved. So I think people are saying we can do better and we have to do better. Because in the end, the people will decide whether to vote for or against leaders who threaten and ignore fundamental norms of our democracy. I am hopeful and confident the separation of powers, the rule of law, while perhaps under stress now, will outlast this storm, emerge as strong as ever. And people like you, whether you're Republicans or Democrats, you will speak up for the rule of law. And thank God you do. Thank you very, very much. Great. Thank you.
That was awesome, Senator. Thank you very much. Just stand right here or take one step away and I'll just do this.
Thank you very much, Senator Leahy. I'm Dan Malthrop with the City Club, and today we're enjoying our annual Law Day Forum with Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont. We're about to begin the audience Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via our radio broadcast or webcast. If you'd like to tweet a question, you can tweet it at the City Club, and our team will work it into the program. Holding our microphones today are Membership and Customer Service Manager Corey Isler and our Youth Forum Council Chair Tiolu Orsanya. May we have our first question, please?
Senator, welcome to Cleveland. Nice to see you again. I think you were in Washington during the Nixon years.
No, I was a prosecutor during the Nixon years. I got elected in '74.
Okay. Change in the atmosphere between those years and these years regarding what's going on in politics. Do you have any opinion about how things might be the same or how things might be different?
Oh boy. Well, I remember what happened when President Nixon fired the special prosecutor. That did not work out very well. And I keep reminding people in the current administration about that. I think we tend to forget there's more than Vietnam. It was a feeling of the American people back then that nobody's above the law. And I'm hoping that the feeling that I felt as a young prosecutor at that time will come through now. I really do. And I don't say it in a naive way. I think it's happening. My wife and I walk in a grocery store or come out of church or anything else in Vermont, and people come up and just hug us and say we're scared, but we want it to change. We're paying attention. These are both Republicans and Democrats saying this because the state's is small. You know who everybody is. And other senators, Sherrod Brown tells me he hears the same thing when he's home. So maybe it'll survive. It'll survive if the people make it survive. Look at that mural on the wall. It'll survive if they make it survive. I wanted to. I have 5 grandchildren. I want to survive for them. And I want them all to be treated equally as they grow up.
Senator Leahy, I want to say thanks for all your great work over the years, your service to the country. We're so excited you're in Cleveland today. The question I had is, are there any plans to lay the groundwork for impeachment happening that we're just not hearing about?
People talk about it. It is not going to happen. When the vote, they have to begin, as you know, in the House. They're not going to, and they require a supermajority in the Senate. That's not going to happen. What can happen is that the elections this fall change the leadership in the House and the Senate, where we can go back to doing things the way we used to. Republicans and Democrats coming together, passing good legislation, bipartisan legislation. Instead of those who are afraid they may get hit by the next tweet, nobody owns a seat in the Senate or in the House. Stand up for your principles, stand up for your oath of office, stand up for the country. That's what's important. And I think this fall, maybe that might come through.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Hi.
I'm going to ask you a separation of powers question off your topic. Since the last time Congress declared war was 1941, yet the United States has gotten itself involved in many wars, although we don't always call them wars, since then. And it seems to me because Congress has basically ceded its war-making authority or war powers to the president. I'd like your opinion on that and what Congress can do to get this power back.
Thank you. I think it has been a mistake to do that. We saw Vietnam War, which actually, when I first ran for the Senate, the majority of people in Vermont supported the war in Vietnam. It's hard to find anybody today who did. Every member of Congress from Vermont always voted to continue it. In April of 1975, when I've been there for 3 months, there was a vote of the then Armed Services Committee whether to continue the war or not. 5 votes. Each one failed by 1 vote. I was the newest, youngest member of the committee. I voted to end it. I became the first Vermonter to ever vote to end the war. I was told that'd be the end of my career. I've been worried about that for the last 40 years. But Iraq, we had a vote on authority to go for it. I voted against that because I did not believe what they were telling us about weapons of mass destruction. And I had reason not to. I actually read the intelligence, and there were no weapons. The war in Afghanistan, there was authorization in the Congress to go there to get Osama bin Laden. When he was actually surrounded, they might have gotten him. Those forces were taken and put into Iraq. A needless, useless, expensive, tragic war. Oh, and we did get Osama bin Laden. The anti-war president did, Barack Obama. But the fact is, no, some decided to talk about, what about Syria? What about some of these others? Some members of the Senate in both parties have said, we have to vote on it. I think members have been afraid to vote on it because who knows what it's going to look like 5 years from now. I wish we would vote. I think we make a terrible mistake by not voting for it.
Good afternoon, Senator. I'm Colleen Cotter with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Welcome to Cleveland. My question is about...
And a friend of my nephew's wife from Montana.
Yes, I adore her. So my question is about the third branch. At the Legal Aid Society, clearly we believe that in order for the third branch of government to operate effectively and efficiently and to fulfill its obligation under the Constitution, every individual needs to be able to have a voice as loud as anyone else's in the judicial branch. Can you comment on where you think we are on that and what we can do as a community and as a nation to improve that?
You know, it sounds arcane to talk about the blue slip process of the federal courts, but you have to go back to there. You've got to have, as federal judges come up, have the senators from those states have some agreement. Now, if the person gets confirmed, turns out to be a lousy judge, they carry some of the responsibility. But with the hundreds, thousands of judges, state, local, federal, we all are hurt if the executive branch or the legislative branch stands up and says, oh, it's terrible what these judges are doing. They should be thrown out. How does the average person come into a court? How about people you represent come into a courtroom without thinking it's already stacked against them? And if that happens, we all are hurt. You know, when I was a prosecutor, before that, when I was in private practice, I might be defending people. I expected that there were good representation on both sides, and you have a fair judge. Fortunately, in Vermont, we did. Mistakes made, probably, but not intentionally. If we don't come back to that, we are hurting. If we think that everything revolves around 1 or 2 people, that's not our country. That's not a country of over 300 million people. That's a general answer, but one, I'm glad you're asking the question. But secondly, those of us who are privileged to be members of a bar, whatever state we're in, we have to speak out. We really have to speak out. We might not like a decision that comes out. We might lose a case. We have to speak out for the integrity and the independence of judges. Time for one more, or what's? Dan, you're the.
We're going to go to about 125.
Oh, okay.
Senator, if you haven't figured it out, you probably understand that you're really speaking to the choir when you're making your statements.
Oh, what the hell? That fellow's good.
But frankly, it bothers me when I speak with my friends, because we're all in the same choir too. Do you have any reason to believe that our words are getting beyond this small group of the choir? I mean,
No, good question. Let me tell you, you're talking about speaking of the choir. In 1980, I was one of 12 senators targeted for defeat. It's my first re-election. 10 were defeated. I was one of 2 made it through. I had the second closest election in the country. I was giving a speech afterward, and a guy in Vermont says to me, he says, Leahy, didn't the closeness of that election teach you nothing? And I said, well, there had to be a lesson in there. Dan's heard the story, but there had to be a lesson in there, but I don't know what it is. So I thought it had something to do with my philosophy. So I called the senator who had the closest election in the country. And I said, Barry Goldwater, what are they trying to tell us? He loved that story. He talked about it right up to the time he died. I say this because things ebb and flow, but keep talking. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough those young people showing up in Washington, but not stopping. Now, I know the president's going down to talk with the NRA. I hope a lot of these young people will speak out and give their views, and the press will cover it. The Women's March, and there are a lot more than just women there are men and women, that had an enormous impact and affected some of our legislation. We make a mistake if we think everything is going to reside in the members of the House and the Senate. It's not. It's got to be the American people speaking out. I mean, you have elections for the Senate here in Ohio this year. Obviously, I'm a close friend of Sherrod Brown. I think he should be coming back because he doesn't hesitate to speak up and talk about Ohio. But get involved. Get involved. You know, you have people as articulate as this young woman speaking up. If you have people my age speaking up, there are a whole lot of others who will join. So I think it is. People tend to drown it out, but fight for a free press. Fight to have your voices heard. Join those who speak. If you got somebody who takes your position, Republican or Democrat, support them. Speak to it. Yes.
Hi, my name is Doug Graves with Sandusky High School. Go Blue Streaks. As an aspiring,
I have a feeling that's a little bit parochial. Go ahead.
As an aspiring politician, what advice can you give me that I can use right now as a freshman in high school?
Well, get involved, be willing to find out somebody who's running that you like. Go and volunteer at the campaign. Spend time, learn about it. But then don't be afraid to run. Don't be afraid to be out in public. You know, it's speak up at your school forums. Enter contests. Have some goal of where you want to end up and work toward it. But don't give up your principles. If you find the only way you can get elected is to go against your principles, it's not worth it. Stick with your principles. You're young, you can do it. And don't let anybody tell you you're too young. I mean, when I ran, Vermont was the only state in the union that never elected anybody under 50. I was 33 when I announced. Basically, it's okay, kids, you can have the nomination, nobody else wants it. It's also the only state in the union that never elected a Democrat. It worked out. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Senator, I want to thank you for being here and thank you for all of the work you've done on judicial nominations over the year. And that's what my question is about. We've heard a lot about breakdown in norms in the Senate, from the blue slip to rushing half-qualified or unqualified nominees through hearings, to not holding hearings at all for a very qualified Supreme Court nominee. My question is, what can be done, both in the Senate and here in our communities, to help reinforce those norms and help them to take hold again?
I hope that we take back. I've been there with the control of the Senate. It's gone back and forth 8 or 9, 10 times. I hope we come back in control, and that some of us, more senior ones, can get together and start putting things back together. It'd be easier in the Senate because there's only 100 of us. Now, I'm now vice chairman. There's only 3 committees that have a vice chairman. Appropriation is one of them. I'm now vice chairman of it. And the chairman and I are working very hard, and we've gone and told Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell we're going to do this, to bring it back to where we don't have extraneous talking point amendments, or what they call poison pill, the right and the left. Go back to actually passing real legislation with real debate. But we have to do that in a whole lot of other things. We obviously should go back to the way that I and others ran the Judiciary Committee, where we have real debate on somebody. And where somebody is totally incompetent. Now, we've had a couple of those recently. One person there had never been in a courtroom is going to be named a trial judge. He was asked by a Republican senator a couple of basic questions about the courtroom. He said, I'm going to have to study that. I mean, there are things that a law clerk wouldn't go into a courtroom without knowing. So maybe we'll bring it back. If I didn't think it was possible, I wouldn't want to be there, and I do want to be there. So and you also have some of the best men and women who work in the Senate. I joke, and I don't even dare look at Christina, Jeremy, or JP, my chief of staff, as I say this, but I joke that 100 senators are merely constitutional impediments to the staff who do all the work. But I see some of the most inspiring people come there in both parties. And that gives me hope. That gives me hope if we can inspire such people to come. And I'm hoping my grandchildren will follow some of that. One especially. That's an inside joke. I'll explain later.
Senator, hello. I'm Tyler Franklin from Sandusky High School also. As part of the young generation, I'd just like to ask, do you believe that partisanship in America can survive during these times, or do you think that whole sided system will collapse with frustration between the stark differences of the parties?
Well, I think it has been good to have both parties, provided the party doesn't say you got to fit an exact litmus test to be part of our party. In our state, we have a Republican governor, Democrat as lieutenant governor. We've gone back and forth in there, and it has helped. We have Republicans and Democrats in our legislature who work things out. I like the two-party system. I don't like it in either party if it becomes you've got to follow an exact litmus test. Then the partisanship does not serve the country. Be proud to be a Republican. Be proud to be a Democrat. But never give up your basic beliefs just because a party says you must. You can't do that. Diversity in the parties, in thought, make us better. I mean, you should hear. You know what I do? Let me tell you a quick story. The dean of the Senate, I get a beautiful office in the Capitol, just right near the Senate chambers. It's got a balcony. Speaker gets half the balcony, I get the other half. We actually loaned part of it to the Pope when he was there to go out. And we said, "Oh, what the hell?" No, we didn't say that. But I have evenings we were facing west, wonderful sunsets. I'll invite a number of senators of both parties out there for an evening session for prayer hour in holy water. One senator said, "Well, holy water," he didn't know whether that worked. He said, "Well, we have all kinds of holy water. We have 12-year-old holy water. We have single malt holy water." He explained to me, and Jeremy, you would have explained this to me, that it was kosher, and we could have that holy water. But we sit there and discuss things, and we've come to agreement on a lot of things. And we've had legislation pass that does that. Sometimes it's things that internationally, when recently the concerns about Tibet and others, but we get it done. And we're doing this with the appropriations. We'll do this with others. That's what you have to go. Forget about shouting at each other on talk shows. Talk quietly to each other in private and work it out. That's the way it was when I came to the Senate. That's the way it can be. And that means everybody has to give up something. One of the most liberal senators years ago was Pat Moynihan of New York. Conservative was Bob Dole of Kansas. They came together and basically saved Social Security by both giving part, and each brought at least 30 senators from their party to the vote. You need 50. They brought at least 60 total. It can be done. It has to be done.
Senator, thank you once again for coming to Cleveland and also for the shout out.
I like Cleveland. Last time I was here, I ended up at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It's great. It's a great museum.
And the oldest deadhead to walk in that place. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's more than a touch of great, let me tell you. Go ahead.
Nice. I also appreciate your shout out to my hometown with a my player that has a big heart. It's a small town, but yeah.
This young man spent time in Washington. He knows what it's like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I served at Senator Leahy's page back in better times in 2010. But I appreciate the gentleman's question about preaching to the choir. One thing that I noticed, sitting in this room with many of the city's most influential people, is there's something similar about a lot of us. I don't know if other people noticed, and that thing that is similar about a lot of us is very different from the people that are most marginalized by President Trump. So when we speak about really pushing back against President Trump, I'm wondering how you think we can start to get voices, those who are closest to the problem, to be closest to the solution. In other words, people of color, poor people, brought into our mainstream political discussion in Washington.
No, you have to. Fortunately, we have more now in the Senate and the House, but you have to. I mean, as you know, Vermont, I believe, is probably the whitest state in the Union. And it was interesting. Election night last year, all the people were gathered here from the different candidates who hopefully had won in this huge ballroom in Vermont, in Burlington, come out to speak. And this handsome 11-year-old African-American boy came out, took the microphone, and he said, "Hello, my name is Patrick Jackson. I'm here to introduce my grandmother, Marcel Leahy, and she will introduce my grandfather, you know, the other Patrick, Patrick Leahy." That was an eye-opener. Everybody wanted his autograph after. Well, that's fine. That's something these children, wonderful parents, my daughter and my son-in-law, and they're actually spending the weekend with us in Virginia this weekend. Children they can go to schools. They have white friends, brown friends, black friends. I was watching Patrick's basketball game last night and looking at the diversity. But in an affluent area, an area that's not neglected, an area that nobody would dare neglect in Northern Virginia, because it could tip every election. What are we doing in Detroit? What are we doing in parts of the South? What are we doing with some of these shootings? What do you do where you're asked to leave Starbucks because you're black? You and I wouldn't be. I want Patrick to grow up in a different world, and we have to keep working for that. You want to hear somebody speak on it far more knowledgeably than I. Listen to Cory Booker sometime. I mean, he still lives in the inner city where he was mayor. Have him talk about the families he's had to help out. I tell you, we need more people like that on a national stage speaking. Thank you.
Senator Leahy, I ask you to set this fascinating discussion of law and partisanship in a global context. And your number of decades in D.C. helps you do that in your awareness of foreign affairs. We have, since the Second World War, been in a period of diminishing hazard to our national existence from military forces of other nations. We fought many brush fire wars, but no wars that are of existential hazard to this country, which, in my own mind, suggests that we are free to be more hyper-partisan within our own country, and that we are now being asked to learn how to handle the internal hazards of extreme partisanship, and I don't think this is probably going to go away. I ask your thoughts.
No, that's interesting. We think of the country coming together. I remember my parents telling me these stories about during World War II. We were under real threat, and the country came together. But you read the history, there were still a lot of voices that weren't. Wonderful woman, author's got a new book out, Reeve Lindbergh, lives in Vermont. Her father, Charles Lindbergh, who could have been a hero bringing us together, wanted us to stay away and basically protect Hitler. So we're always going to have voices like that. But I think we face threats. The first threat is to our own democracy. There are things that we can be and should be doing around the world. We can't retreat to Fortress America. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Leahy, and thank you very much also for your decades of service to our nation. Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying our annual Law Day Forum with featuring Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont. Our forum is also the Sidney D. Josephs Memorial Forum on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, made possible by a generous gift from Sidney's wife, Nina Josephs, and we appreciate her generosity and his commitment to the City Club. Our annual Law Day Forum is presented in collaboration with the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. Other community partners for our forum today include the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland and the Northeast Ohio chapter of the American Constitution Society. Our hospitality partner is the Metropolitan at the Nine Hotel. We appreciate your partnership, all of you. We also welcome students from Sandusky City Schools. Thank you for making the trip. We also want to recognize the presence of our friends from the Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage, along with some of the winners of the annual Stop the Hate contest. Congratulations to all of you. Student participation in City Club forums is provided by many foundations, including the William M. Weiss Foundation. We thank all of you for being here today. That brings us to the end of our program. Thank you, Senator Leahy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation and your presence here today. Our forum is adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Robert Conrad, Cleveland State University, the Chautauqua Institution, the Cleveland Clinic, and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland Incorporated.